Welcome back, sharing some research with Dr. Stephanie. You may have heard me talk about either on the podcast or on another YouTube video. We've been participating or trying to get research done on neurodiverse Christian couples. Well, one of the things that we wanted to look at in our research, which sadly we will not be able to answer with the research, was one of my hypotheses or questions is maybe who is doing better, neurodiverse Christian couples or neurodiverse couples who do not claim to be of faith. So in our 319 respondents, sadly only about 5% or less said that they were not people of faith. So that is not adequate enough information to be able to make a comparison between two groups, because around 95% of the population said that they were a person of faith and belonged to a Protestant or evangelical denomination. So we cannot use the results that we will be putting out to say one group is doing better than the other. So what we can talk about is of the 95% that participated, let's look at marital satisfaction, and then let's really talk about what does that marital satisfaction mean, or do we only place if we're doing better than our non-Christian counterparts? Are we only basing that on divorce? Because if that's the case, we need to really look at some things. So again, we have 319 participants. The participants are neurodiverse relationship, either in a courting relationship, engaged, cohabitating. Some are married, and then some responded that they had filed for divorce or in process of filing for divorce or separated. So all different types of relationships. Now, all people who responded said that they were in a heterosexual relationship. Two people accidentally responded that they were in a homosexual relationship, but then in looking at the data, that did not turn out to be the case. So let's look at what do our percentages show us on marital satisfaction. You may have heard this part on the podcast before. So happily married and fulfilled, we have about 10%. So Dan and I did not take the survey, but we would put ourselves in happily married, fulfilled with a great, strong and healthy neurodiverse Christian relationship. So 10% are in that happily married, fulfilled. So satisfied, content was about 5%. And then satisfied more than dissatisfied with room for improvement was about 22%. So I'd say that puts about 37% of those who responded to the survey, 37% at a neutral to positive space. All right, so that's okay. I mean, that's kind of better than the national average or the international average. So there's a statistic going around. It's pretty widely stated. I find it on articles. I find it in blogs. I have not found the actual article yet. I would actually like to find the study because I need that type of information before I can do my own academic study. But the study says, or the blogs or articles say, that about 80% of people who are in neurodiverse relationships, that 80% of their relationships will end up in divorce. I can find where it says European studies or a study in Europe, but I haven't actually found the citation of the study, but it's the statistic that's going around. So then let's look at, we'll talk about the divorce rate is actually very low in those who participated in our survey, who said they were Protestant or religious or evangelical. So we have 37% then at satisfied more than dissatisfied. We have only 6 to 7% who said that they had filed for divorce, were filing for divorce, or currently divorced. But staggering number is about 66% are dissatisfied to very dissatisfied in their marriage. So what I'm finding through the comments and through interviews, that some are staying married because of their vows, because of the covenant and their faith, because they don't feel they can divorce. So that don't think that necessarily means that marriages, that neurodiverse Christian couples are necessarily doing that much better than their non-faith counterparts, because many are in the relationship who are very dissatisfied, who would like to be in a divorce situation, but feel like they can't due to their faith. So we have work to do on changing these numbers. Now, what are some of the reasons? So how are our neurodiverse Christian couples living? Now, again, 95% of the respondents claim to be of the Christian faith. So of those, we have living in the same house, in the same bedroom, 58%. All right, so barely more than half are living in the same house, in the same bedroom. Living in the same house, but living in different bedrooms is 21%. Living in the same house, but different rooms and an in-home separation agreement is 2%. Living in two different spaces or houses more than 50% of the week is 1.5%. Separated, 5.9%. Legally separated, less than 1%. Legally separated but living in the same house due to custody or financial reasons, a little over 2%. And those who said they were filed or divorced was no longer living together due to divorce, was a little over 5%. So I want to talk a little bit to, especially my Christian colleagues, clinicians, pastors, when you hear that a marriage situation that you're working with, especially when there's neurodiversity, meaning at least one person is on the spectrum, sometimes couples have to come up with some creative ways to be able to stay together. So as I said before, most are staying together due to their faith, due to their covenant. But a lot of times there are children on the spectrum in the family as well as an adult on the spectrum. So according to our research that we did, again, 319 respondents, I asked the question, how many do you have biological kids with ADD or ADHD? There was 124 yes and 196 no. I asked, do you have biological kids who are diagnosed, being tested, or suspected to be on the spectrum? 169 said yes, 151 said no. I asked, are there nieces, nephews, grandchildren with either ADHD, ADD, or autism spectrum? Yes, 115, no, 95, and I don't know, 110. So often what is going on in a neurodiverse family system is there could be more than one person in the home on the spectrum. And when people are on the spectrum, there are different sensory profiles. So let's say dad is on the spectrum and he has a sensory profile that is very sensitive or averse to noise. And let's say our son Johnny, he is on the spectrum and he also has ADHD and he is sensory seeking and he tends to make a lot of noise. That could be a very difficult combination, not a right or wrong, but a very difficult combination for an adult who is on the spectrum who is very sensory averse and a child in the home is sensory seeking or ADHD or makes lots of noise. So sometimes parents, families have to come up with different ways to be able to coexist in the same house, because it's not possible for little Johnny to never make any noise and never upset his dad, who may then discipline him and maybe too harshly or maybe inappropriately, or maybe have developmental expectations that are not realistic for an 8-year-old child because of the autism spectrum. So you have to think that sometimes people who are trying to stay together may end up staying together, and it may be best for their family dynamic to have different bedrooms, maybe because there's different sleep issues, maybe there's different sleep needs. For some people on the spectrum, it's too overwhelming to share a bedroom, a bathroom, or a bed with someone. It can be too overwhelming to be sharing too much space for some. And sometimes just the noise and activity of a family can be too difficult. So couples are trying to come up with ways to stay together. It can be very complex. And so when they hear from their faith provider, especially pastors or clergy, that this isn't biblical or that it's not right, that they're not sharing a bedroom or sharing a house, or that it's weird or it's wrong, based on the way that they are trying to live or try to be together to keep their family intact, I need you to be educated that you might be saying things that are harmful. Also maybe very well-intentioned, but very ignorant based on the situation. So let's kind of go back then to what are the causes, what's going on. I asked the couples to list the top 5 things. What are the top 5 reasons for the complexities, the difficulties, or the dissatisfaction in marriage? 68% says it is connection or intimacy problem. 45% said we lack conflict resolution or there's avoidance of conflict. 39% said the sexual part of the relationship was difficult, challenging, non-existent. 38% said that communication on a daily basis is difficult. And so when you think about that, if you're not really versed or educated in the world of autism and neurodiverse relationships, that might seem very trivial. Well, couples have little disagreements and little spats every day. That's not what we're talking about here. There can be difficulty communicating about logistics of the kids, making agreements, like the big things. Most of the couples I work with agree on. They agree on the faith things. They agree on the eternal things. They agree on the big picture things. But it's the daily life things, implementing things when there's memory issues, executive function issues, lack of follow through and agreement, emotional dysregulation from either spouse, neurotypical or neurodiverse. It makes communication on a daily basis not only difficult, but sometimes detrimental in some cases. 34% says we can't see each other's perspective, and so that goes to theory of mind issues or mind blindness. And I went ahead and added number 6, 31% was emotional dysregulation, and AS and NT partners both checked that. So that could be from the neurotypical spouse's perspective, maybe the dysregulation of their autistic spouse who might have a meltdown or a verbally aggressive dysregulation or a shutdown, or maybe becomes self-injurious or just destroys property during those times of dysregulation. But it could also mean from the person on the spectrum's perspective, when their wife is escalating or spouse is escalating, not just showing emotion, but escalating maybe into yelling and screaming, that dysregulation is very concerning to them. So if you kind of look at these things that are going on, and let's add in the perspective, what I was talking about, that usually, not all the time, but in many cases, almost half of the families have a child with ADHD or on the spectrum, or perhaps some other developmental delay or disability going on. This is a very complex marriage and family system. So again, part of me doing the research, my heart is not to call out or not to be negative. My heart is, we desire at NeuroDiverse Christian Couples and the International Association of Neurodiverse Christian Marriages, we want to train and equip you. If you want to know how to equip and to be equipped so you can better serve and minister to marriages and family of faith where autism is a part of the family system, please go to www.christianneurodiversemarriage.com. Click courses, click professionals. I'm happy to share with you from my dissertation research, the history of autism, the diagnostic labels, why it's even in the DSM to begin with, when it really shouldn't be because it's not a mental health condition. What are the differentials? What are co-occurring issues? And what are the impacts and the dynamics in a neurodiverse marriage and neurodiverse family system? So I hope that if you've watched this and you're concerned about neurodiverse Christian couples and you want to do better, especially those of us in the faith field, my interviews with couples are showing me that those in the field, those who are Christians and practicing in some kind of counseling, coaching, or clergy, you need to understand that those of faith, they're wanting to come to people of faith. Pastors, you are the first people that people tend to come to when their marriage is in crisis. If you are not prepared, if your advice is simply just to pray, read scripture, have more sex, and submit more to each other, that is not going to be advice that's going to work for a very complex situation. And I don't discount prayer, and I don't discount praying together and being together and going to church. But what we're going to call Sunday school answers doesn't work in a complex marriage situation. Many Christians and Christian counselors, including myself, I wasn't trained. When I was getting my master's in counseling, I wasn't trained about autism in marriage. In fact, when I was being trained, the DSM-4 had just come out. Asperger's was just kind of being released and understood. And I was told it was 1 in 10,000 at the time. I wouldn't see someone in my practice who was on the autism spectrum. I was told people with autism don't get married. I was told people on the spectrum isolate. I was told people on the spectrum aren't self-aware enough to be able to come to counseling. So I mainly needed to know the diagnosis so that I could differentiate it from other diagnoses, but not to worry, I wouldn't see anyone in my practice. Well, 90 to 95% of my practice are people on the spectrum and people that they love. So I work with siblings, I work with families, I work with marriages and family systems, primarily in the field of autism. And there are very, very few people in this field who are equipped in faith and equipped in understanding autism and equipped in changing some of your traditional strategies to work better with those who are on the spectrum. So again, I invite you. It's a very complicated marriage system. And again, you could be very well-intentioned and want to work with someone who's on the spectrum and do marriage counseling. But I ask you two things. If you're not trained, please get training. And if you're not trained and not willing to be trained, please tell the couple that you are not trained, and please know of people who are trained so you can make a good referral. So I want to invite, again, more pastors, clergies, coaches, Christian counselors. Please join us for to become more autism aware and trained at www.christianneuroDiversemarriage.com. Courses, click professionals. We want to help you, mentor you, because we want you to help give hope to our couples, and we want to be there for you too on your journey as you are willing to be trained and more aware of our neurodiverse Christian couples.